Hello, 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 and welcome to the Brown Mama's Muffy Mendoza YouTube channel. My name is Muffy Mendoza, and I blog at brownmamas.com, where I focus on making moms better moms so that dads can be better dads, children become better adults, and ultimately communities become better communities. I hope you are having an awesome day. And so if you don't know, I am working on a book. I've been writing a book for the last 3 years, and I'm almost done with it, praise God. And I've been looking at a lot of books as I write my book, and I also found an amazing book that I absolutely love. It's helping me to really organize my thoughts around parenting my children, as well as to develop some strategies for raising boys. If you don't know, I have all sons. I don't have any daughters. I have all sons, 3 African-American sons. And one of the books that I'm reading is called The Warrior Method. It's by an author called Ray Winbush, who I've also looked up on YouTube and has some awesome videos. I love him. And so the first part of the book was really interesting. And one of the things he talked about was different modes of parenting. And he says in his book that there are 3 ways to parent: the white way, the gray way, and the black way. Now, I'm going to describe these to you, but just to let you know, just in case you're questioning, I am a parent who parents the black way. But I'm going to explain this to you, and then I'm going to break down a little bit for you why I feel like he is right on point with his idea around parenting the black way. And let me just say that I do feel like different strokes for different folks, and I feel like depending on your culture, your background, your ethnicity, the neighborhood you live in, the city you live in, and the vibe, the feeling, the culture of those things, you do need to parent a specific way in order to make sure that your children realize where they sit in the world, as well as who they need to be in order to continue to have a fruitful culture, a fruitful community, a fruitful family. And so in this book, Raymond Winbush says that there are 3 ways of parenting: the white way, the gray way, and the black way. And of course, he's talking about 4 black parents in particular. He says that, if you're wondering where you can get this t-shirt at, the original mama with the brown mama, brownmamas.com/shop. Anyhow, he says there are 3 ways of parenting: the white way, the gray way, the black way. The white way, he says, for black parents of parenting is basically accepting, both consciously and unconsciously, that racism exists in the world, and basically sending your kids out into the world, telling them, or maybe even subconsciously telling them, that the world is racist, we have to deal with it, but you should be raised like everybody else. So he says in the book that the white way of parenting basically accepts that maybe there is racism, but large and by far really truly believes that if you, as your parents maybe told you, jump a little higher, run a little faster, you'll be able to overcome racism, and you'll be able to, just move. And that you'll be able to succeed as long as you realize you need to jump a little higher and run a little faster. And that really actually hit me a few weeks ago, what he said, when I was actually listening to the new Jay-Z album. I was listening to one of the videos on the one song he got called Still Nigga is on Tidal, and he says, the guy at the very beginning of the video says, racism is not so much about what you're not included in as much as it is about what they don't tell you. And he talked about how, he climbed the corporate ladder and did everything right, went to college, got the degrees, kissed the butt in the corporate environment, and still he didn't realize that there were other people around him who happened to be Caucasian that were being groomed to go higher than he was. Simply because he was black, he would never be included on those conversations and in those clubs. And parents, according to Ray Winbush, parents who are parenting the white way, oftentimes their children end up in these situations because they really believe that if I do what I'm supposed to do, if I uphold my end of the bargain, then the world is going to uphold theirs. That though there's racism in the world, racism only affects people who don't jump a little higher and run a little faster. Then he goes on to talk about, next, the gray way of parenting. He says that the gray way of parenting is basically parents who accept that there is racism, but have an unconscious acceptance of it. So they basically say, they tell their children that there is racism in the world. They tell their children, you know, we are able to overcome this racism within the current confines of the system that we live in, right? So these are the parents that send their kids to school every day, but you oftentimes see them up. I used to be a great parent. You see us up to school fighting with the teachers because we know that the schools are not providing for our kids what needs to be provided. And so we're always up at the school. We're the ones who are the first ones at the PTA meeting. We're oftentimes the presidents of the PTA meeting. We're oftentimes the room parents at the school. Because while we are committed to ensuring that our kids succeed, we don't necessarily realize that the system in and of itself is broken. So while the white parents have just basically accepted it all, they've accepted the parents who parent the white way, they've accepted it all. They've accepted the racism, they've accepted all of it, and they've also accepted an outlook that says, jump a little higher, run a little faster, and you'll make it, period. Gray parents are a little different because they say, you know I'm going to have to fight. Basically, gray parents are down for the scrap, right? They're like, okay, I know I got to fight the system, but the system is what it is. There's nothing I can do to change it. It's going to be what it is, right? Well, the black parents have basically done a whole 360. Parents who parent the black way are basically saying, not only do I see it, and not only am I going to fight it, but I'm not accepting the system, period. And that's the way I pretty much parent my kids. I'm not accepting the system, period. There's nothing about the system that is appealing to me. I know that it's broken, and I am going to actively fight against it, but more so, I'm going to remove my children, my family, myself as best I can from the system that I know is broken. And so I loved this section of The Warrior Method by Ray Winbush because for me, it solidified that there is a black way of parenting. And I think as African-American mothers in particular and families, period, sometimes we don't want to accept that we have to do things differently, you know? And I run into this with a lot of, like I said, I run a support group for black moms here in the city of Pittsburgh called Pittsburgh Brown Mamas. If you're wondering where you can get this t-shirt out, you can go to brownmamas.com/shop and you can get you an original mama t-shirt. But anyhow, I run into this a lot talking to my mamas about who really believe that the system works. They've had the system fail them, sometimes with multiple children, but they really believe that if I fight against it, if I'm just willing to be down for the fight, I'm going to be able to change this for my kids. And I think a lot of that has to do with how we define success for our children, right? So success for black children needs to stop meaning that they are able to, one, climb the corporate ladder, that they are able to, two, join white or Caucasian owned or Asian owned or, anybody owned other than black owned businesses and be successful. For black children, success needs to begin to mean that the children come back to the community and invest in the community. That the children have successful families. That our sons are able to find wives and our daughters are able to find husbands so that they can create communities that not just leave a legacy for one generation, but also leave a legacy for generations and generations and generations to come. And I understand because I have a lot of single moms in my group who will say, there's no other way for me to fight the system other than for me to go up to the school and to basically unconsciously accept the racism and fight against it. And I always buck up against that because I really and truly believe that anything you want, I believe that the desires of your heart are put there for a reason. So if in your heart you really, really want a good education for your kids, that means that an education that will equate to investment in your community, an education that will equate to, whole families for your children and your grandchildren. If you really want that, then it's out there. But you have to take the first step. And I think as African-American parents, we forget that we are the first teacher. We are the first person responsible. And so if you don't take the step, your kid is not going to be courageous enough to take the step, because whatever you want in your kid, you're going to have to put it in them. You're going to have to put courage and bravery and faith with works into your kid. And if your kid doesn't see you take the leap of faith, I don't know what makes you think in your wildest dreams that they are going to be brave enough to do it also. So when we're talking about parenting from a Black perspective, number one, we need to realize where we are on the parenting spectrum. Are you just unconsciously, are you the jump a little higher, run a little faster parent? Meaning there's racism out there, but if you do good, you're going to overcome it, even though we know that's not true. Are you the great parent? Are you the parent who's up at the school fighting with the teachers when you don't have to? Homeschooling is an option. So many schools have homeschool co-ops that you can get your kid into, get your kid a good education from people who actually care and who are going to train your child up to invest in their community, not just leave it. Or are you a Black way parent? Know where you are on the spectrum, and then think about how you are thinking about success for your kid. If success for your kid just means college and climbing the corporate ladder, then more power to you. But just know that that has its own set of consequences. That often comes with disappointment from the child because they get in that corporate environment and they realize, number one, they're not wanted, and number two, the sky is the limit. There's only so far you can go because you ain't a part of the club. And if you're not a part of the club, at the end of the day, I have to be honest with myself. If I got 3 kids, 5 nieces and nephews, and 2 of my best friends got kids, and they come in and say they need a job, and then some stranger off the street comes in and says they need a job, who am I going to give the jobs to? I'm going to give the jobs to the people I know first because I want to make sure that the people in my family and my community are taken care of. So we can't blame Caucasian people for being that way. But the thing is, we have to start raising our kids to create their own clubs. Make your own club. And the only way to do that is if we begin to parent them the Black way, which basically says, I won't accept the system. I will create my own. I will imagine my own realities for my own children so that they can breed their own realities for their own children, their own communities, their own families. And without an individual thinking like this, there is no family thinking like this. Therefore, there is no community thinking like this. So we have to begin to really examine, what success means for our children. What does parenting look like for Black people? How do we craft that in a way that equates to Black economic success, Black family success, Black social success? How do we do that? I highly recommend you get this book, The Warrior Method, and read it, especially if you have sons, because it just gave me, like I said, a new perspective for thinking about how I'm raising my sons and how I'm parenting my family in general. brownmamas.com/shop is where you can get this t-shirt as well as some guidebooks on raising Black children. So I hope you have an awesome day. As I said before, my name is Muffy Mendoza. I blog at brownmamas.com where I focus on making moms better moms so that dads can be better dads, children become better adults, and ultimately communities become better communities. Have an awesome day. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.